Welcome back to the Deep Dig A Sports Pod. I'm your host, D, and today we are going to be discussing the action from week 11 of college football season. But before we dig into that, be sure to hit that like button, be sure to subscribe, drop some comments below, let me know your thoughts, and we're just going to hop right into it. And so there was a bunch of big games just scattered all through the nation. I'm going to go ahead and start on Ole Miss taking on the number 2 team in the nation, the Georgia Bulldogs. And the Georgia Bulldogs travel to Oxford, Mississippi. And it looked like right off the bat, comes out. It's a very rainy day, not really great conditions. The Ole Miss Rebels go out there, and it just seems like it's going to be another Lane Kiffin loss to Georgia. Jaxson Dart gets hurt, throws a pick. The Georgia Bulldogs go down and score a touchdown. Everyone's like, what are we going to do? Like, it seems like it's just going to be another blowout again, but things turn around. Austin Simmons steps in for Jaxson Dart, takes them down the field. He goes 5 for 6, has 65 yards. The Rebels score a touchdown. And realistically, from that point on, they don't look back. Jaxson Dart comes back in, shows resilience. Man, he had a day. His stock for me really rose today. That was a great showing for him. He steps back into the game, gritting it out, and looked awesome. I mean, he looked mobile. He looked on point as far as his accuracy, being even down a couple of weapons. It looked good, and the Rebels end up pulling out a win kind of handedly, to be completely honest. Their defense towards the end of the game really shut out and made Carson Beck look like he had been the last couple games, which is not that great. I mean, realistically, not that great. He's had now the most interceptions, I believe, through 10 games. Then I bel I'm pretty sure that was the stat that showed up. It was like the most interceptions in 10 games for of any SEC quarterback in the last like 20 years. So he is not having a great season, but the Ole Miss Rebels, they are looking good. I mean, yeah, as I was saying before, Jaxson Dart, his stock just completely rose today. I'm feeling 100% good about it. You see the size, you see the athleticism, you see what people were talking about when they were blowing out tomato cans, and then you saw the fall off when they faced a real defense, but man, you started to see it again, and this team actually believes in themselves. And honestly, like kudos to Lane Kiffin because this was him. He realized that he talked about this after the game. He was like, "Hey, I think we lost last time by like 30 points, and I decided never again." We completely went out. We hit the portal. We recruited hard, and I was like, "We are building to beat the Georgias of the world, and specifically Georgia, because that's who embarrassed us last time. We are going to build this roster to compete against this Bulldogs roster," and they 100% did it. I mean, it ended up being not really that close in the end. I believe it was 28-10. So they Ole Miss defense really did shut down this Georgia offense. The Georgia offense did help them, as I said before. I mean, offensively for Georgia, you've got some problems. I don't know where, like Carson Beck said that he had 3 goals coming into this season as far as what he wanted to accomplish, and that's why he was coming back to college. First goal, a lofty goal, win a national championship while he was a starting quarterback. Okay, they could still do that. His second goal, win the Heisman Trophy. That's out the window. The third goal was to play himself into being a first round quarterback. He's also played himself out of that, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he could test really well moving forward in the combine. He could interview very well, but I mean, the play just hasn't been there this year. I mean, realistically, if anything, he's probably dropped his draft stock. And it's just crazy to see because this was a guy that in the beginning of the season was highly touted. This was a guy that people were saying was going to be 1-1. It's so far from that now. He might be the best bad quarterback of the SEC, but I mean, like, it's turned into a shit show realistically. And so I don't, and not all the blame is on him. And I know realistically he doesn't have Lad McConkey. He doesn't have Brock Bowers. The running backs haven't been as good in the past as they've been in the past. So the weapons aren't there. But realistically, if you are a guy who people are touting as the 1-1 quarterback, you should be able to overcome that. You should be able to elevate guys. And we just haven't seen that from him. He just looked, to be completely honest, he looks average. And so, yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, that's the biggest weakness for Georgia is that offense. They're going to go as far as Carson Beck is going to take them. And realistically, Carson Beck has shown that he is not going to take them that far. Um, and again, I'll get kudos to Austin Simmons for stepping in during that drive for Ole Miss. I mean, that was, again, classic. Oh, here we go again. Like, Georgia's going to blow out Ole Miss. And I'm sure if you're Lane Kiffin, you've got to be like a little bit nervous. Your stomach has to be in knots when you see Jaxson Dart go down and then limp into the tent. You've got to be like, okay, what are we gonna do? But I mean, now you feel good about your season moving forward. You still have some things that need to fall your way in order to actually make the college football playoffs. But you've put yourself in a position where no one wants to face you. And I know that's what they were saying in the broadcast. Like, okay, if they do sneak into this playoff, who wants to go against Ole Miss? I don't think anybody does because they do have a really good offense, and we just seen what their defense can do when they actually focus in and play a good game. I mean, realistically, that defensive line, that is why they go out there and they recruit as hard as they did. They got a bunch of transfers that they knew what they could do, and they got after the quarterback. And Carson Beck just didn't look comfortable that entire game. Realistically, after the first touchdown, I mean, they only had 3 points moving forward. They did not put up a good showing at all, and that was because of a mix of the Ole Miss defense, that pass rush, but also their inability to adapt, and that goes on Carson Beck. That also goes on offensive coordinator Bobo. I mean, realistically, you gotta be better, bro. You are supposed to be an SEC powerhouse. You can't lose this game in this fashion. So next up, I mean, we'll see what happens moving forward with these two. It does take a step back, and we're going to talk about it later this week. So be sure to subscribe as we go over the college football playoff projections. But I mean, this SEC is wide open. Who's going to take it? I mean, I was thinking that the best team in the SEC was going to be Georgia, and Georgia just keeps showing that they cannot put together both sides of the ball on any given day. Like, it just doesn't happen for them. Is it gonna be Texas? Is it going to be I mean, I truly do not know. It's gonna be awesome to see down the stretch. I mean, now we're playing ball, baby. Now we're playing ball. Uh, Another game in the SEC, we'll go ahead and stick to the SEC for right now. This was a playoff elimination game. This was Alabama and the Crimson Tide going to LSU. And everything, LSU, you made me look stupid. You made me look stupid. I put it on wax. I mean, I say a lot of things into the microphone, obviously, because we do like 4 shows a week, but this one I felt so adamant about. I was like, if there's any week that the LSU Tigers are going to step up on defense and show that they can defend a mobile quarterback, it is going to be this week because they are coming off a bye. They're coming off a loss where they got embarrassed by Marcel Reed, where it looked like they did not even fathom. They couldn't even understand what a mobile quarterback was. So you knew that what they were going to focus on with Jalen Milroe rolling into town, and it just didn't happen. Like, I don't know what they were thinking, but it did not happen. Jalen Milroe ran all over this LSU defense, and it is embarrassing. You should 100% be embarrassed. Like, now the chirps of Brian Kelly does not fit this team. Brian Kelly cannot adapt. What is he doing? He is just not good enough to compete with the upper echelon of the SEC. Garrett Nussmeier. I was a huge Nussmeier guy going into this game, I was a huge Nussmeier guy this whole season, to be honest. I like what he does. I think that if he stays within the offense and stays within his own abilities, doesn't go crazy and try to do like outer worldly things like run around the pocket, just throw it away. You don't have to make plays if they're not there. Like, just stick to what you do and run the ball, get it to the guys that you need to get it to. He just can't do it. I don't know what he thinks he is. He needs to learn amongst himself. Like, he is not a top tier athlete. He is not going to be able to fit it into the tightest of windows. And I mean, realistically, his accuracy at certain points is just shot. Like, he seems like a golfer that is just stepping up to the tee and has no idea where it's going. He's like, just close his eyes and pray that it gets somewhere near the hole at any point. So, I mean, LSU, you made me look bad. But on the other side, I did warn of these things. So, I mean, but Drew also called it. Drew said Bama was going to take it. He said for all the reasons that I was worried about, those were the reasons that Alabama was going to take it. And this is a huge win for Kalen DeBoer because, again, this was a playoff elimination game. Now LSU has no path to come back. Alabama continues to stay in that spot. I think that realistically, this even moves them up a tier. I know they had them at, I believe, the 11 spot in the college football playoff projections. I think this moves them up. This gives them another quality win. But I mean, their destiny lies with them if they can continue to rattle off wins. But we'll see if they can continue to do that. But this is a huge one for Kalen DeBoer. This is one that you got to feel good walking away from him because we showcased what we can do on offense. We know that we have a solid defense, and if we just stay disciplined, no stupid penalties, no going out there and forgetting how to play offense. Like if we can continue to do the things that Nick Saban has set in this Alabama culture, we will go out there and win games. And it was awesome to see. I think the final score ended up being 42-13. So again, another one that didn't really feel close at all. You felt good about it. And again, Bama, you're going to hopefully keep it rolling and get into it. But I'm not going to call anyone a playoff team until it's set because I did that with Texas A&M before. I'm not going to do it now. All right, moving over to the Big Ten. So, I mean, the top of the Big Ten stays the top of the Big Ten, realistically. Ohio State goes ahead and blows the doors off of Purdue. Penn State blows the doors off of Washington. Who did Oregon play? Oregon played Maryland and got a huge win. I love them like just kind of showing that they are not going to let their foot off the gas. They're out there running fake punts when they're up by like 20. Like I do like that. I like that Dan Lanning has that. We are going to prove it every single week that we are the top team in the league. Dylan Gabriel is playing himself into Heisman candidacy. He is now ranked, I believe he's the second in the odds, right above Jaxson Dart. So this team is kind of flying under the radar for being the number one team in the nation. They have a pretty easy path the rest of the way through. I think that this is a team, once you really start to get them in the playoffs and see what they can do against high caliber. I mean, realistically, they left points on the table against Ohio State. So I do think that they are a good notch above Ohio State. And Ohio State has proven that they are probably one of the only other teams in the entire nation that is a complete team. We just saw it with Georgia. Georgia has a great defense. They don't really have the offense there. With LSU, LSU had a defense that cannot go against a mobile quarterback. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. Alabama forgets how to play football sometimes. BYU gets points put up on them by random like third string quarterbacks. So there's just in this whole playoff bracket in the top tier of this year's college football standings, there are teams with a lot of holes in them, but those two teams, Ohio State and Oregon, have proven that they have both offense and defense, and they have coaches that really care. So those are the most two complete teams, but Oregon has just shown they are a notch above Ohio State. Penn State, again, they found offense again. Cool. I need to see it against a big boy. This does nothing for me. It just keeps you in the standings. Cool. But I need to see you put up points against a legit defense. That's all I'm going to say about that. Indiana goes, I believe it was at home. They played Michigan. And this was a close game, much closer than people expected. I mean, realistically, the narrative is already out there for Indiana. They need to either beat Ohio State this week or have a good showing in a loss. But if they go out there and get blown out, I don't know if they still end up in this college football playoff. We'll see where they rank them after this. But yeah, I mean, you don't feel great about it. I mean, it's a team in Michigan that everyone has said is bad. They do not have a quarterback. They have the guy playing quarterback for them went from starting to second string to third string and now back to starting. They do not have a guy that can sling the rock. So you're playing a team that is one dimensional and you really couldn't put up points against them. I mean, they do still have a lot of talent on that defensive side of the ball. I was expecting Indiana to go out there and light it up and show like, hey, this is a team that still has a name, that still has a really good defense. And if we go out there and put up points, this has to prove something. But you keep it a close game. I don't know how that affects them moving forward, but that is just something to think about that people are already talking about their strength of schedule. And if you don't go out there and you didn't go out there and look impressive against Michigan team that, again, doesn't have a quarterback that cannot throw the ball. I just don't know how that affects you moving forward. And I mean, Indiana obviously has things to improve. They showed a lot of holes in their game. Their receiving core dropped a ton of balls today. You got to get better. You got to shore up these things. We got to make sure moving forward that we finish guys. And I mean, this is the most important matchup of the year coming up for Indiana against Ohio State. Number 4, Miami takes on Georgia Tech in what many thought was a trap game because this Georgia Tech team has shown flashes. They've shown that they are very talented and they'll stick around and they'll play ball. And this Miami team, this is just kind of like I'm done. I'm so glad that Miami gets the loss in this. It ended up being 23-28. Georgia Tech takes it. I'm done with the charade of pretending like Miami is an elite team, is the actually 4th best team in the nation. It wasn't. I mean, we've seen it. They had a great win the first week, and from there on out, they've just been riding it out. I mean, realistically, they've had close calls against Cal. They had against Virginia Tech. They had against Louisville, put up a bunch of points against them, and they were in danger. Duke put up a bunch of points against them, and they were in danger. I mean, realistically, this has been Miami the whole time. I mean, the only thing that really kind of kept them out of it is because they have a Heisman caliber quarterback that can put up points. But at certain times, and I said this last week, Miami just forgets how to play football on both sides of the ball for long stretches of time. It just happens. I mean, realistically, their defense hasn't shown anything all year. They just don't have a pulse. And offensively, Cam Ward and in this offense just forget how to play ball at long stretches of time. And I knew eventually it was going to catch up to them. I'm glad it did. I mean, realistically, it opens up this ACC, and now realistically, I think it's only a one team league or a one team conference that is actually going to get into the playoff. And I don't think that this Miami team is good enough to beat SMU if SMU continues to take care of business. So I'm excited for that because I was afraid that there was going to be 2 teams in the ACC that would go because Miami, if they went undefeated the rest of this way and played SMU and lost, you couldn't leave a highly ranked Miami team out of this college football playoff. But now I think you have no problem doing it. If they took this loss against Georgia Tech, that's going to knock them down a whole bunch. And then if they do lose in the conference championship to SMU, that's a SMU spot hands down. So yeah, I'm glad. I mean, realistically, too, I understand the point of view of at certain points, the defense has to do their due diligence. But in the end, Cam Ward, being as nonchalant as he is, being as lackadaisical at certain points, I'd seen last week he had a couple of highlight reels where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to spin out of this clean pocket. I'm going to just stand here and then I'll throw a pass and it ends up being a touchdown. And people were like, this guy clip farming? He's clip farming at an ACC level? This is crazy. But it does seem like that. Like he just plays this style that is so nonchalant and it just came back to bite him in the ass this week. I mean, the strip sack to pretty much end the game is what did it. And yeah, I get that the defense needs to bail him out at certain points, but you knew that wasn't going to be the case. That hasn't been the case the entire year. You had to put on your big boy pants. You had to go out there and win the game again because this is the position that you guys have put yourself in and you just couldn't do it. And so I'm glad that we're getting those pretenders out. I'm glad we're moving on from it. and we'll see. I'm very interested to see how far in the rankings they do fall because this might just be who Miami is. Just a average team that struggled against average opponents and now gets a loss. And I don't think that I know afterwards Cam Ward was saying like, "Hey, I'm glad because we needed the adversity. Now this is going to turn it. We're going to flip a switch and we're going to move forward. We've been playing with fire." Why did it take a loss? I mean, realistically, you had so many times where you were in trouble. That should have turned on the switch. That should have made you play better, but it hasn't. I think that's just who Miami is this season. I think that they were one of the biggest pretenders in the entire nation, and I'm glad that they ended up getting a loss. And now we could have just one team from the ACC being represented because it is a down year for the ACC, and they don't really have a true national title contender. So they only deserve one spot. Moving over to the Big 12. This is a super interesting conference. I mean, realistically, where I don't even know where to start because all of these games mattered because the Big 12 is so closely contested. Uh go ahead and start with like the last game that was actually played, the Holy War. BYU takes on Utah, and Utah gave them a scare. Utah really came out and put it on them. They were excited. They were energized. There was no way that they were going to not show up for this game specifically. And they roll out Rose, who is now the third quarterback to play for Utah this season. They decided to sit Isaac Wilson and roll with this new guy. And Rose looked good. I mean, he came out there, he was unafraid. I think a lot of the pressure comes off when you're not really playing for big stakes. You're just playing spoiler. So you got to take that into effect. But man, did he put on a show. But BYU does what BYU does. I mean, realistically, we've seen it in the past where they get in trouble, but they do what good teams do and find a way to win. And this one came down to the last drive. They end up on fourth down. They get sacked at the 1 yard line, but there was a Utah hold. A couple plays later, they have a bomb and it takes them to within 10. And they just end up in field goal range and hit the field goal to go up with 3 seconds left. And BYU takes it out. They remain undefeated in the conference. I'm concerned because I feel like for BYU, I think any of these top contenders in the Big 12 can knock them off. It's just about getting them on any given day. I think any of the top contenders can beat any of the other top contenders in the Big 12. I could see Colorado taking them out. I could see, if they have their mind right, Iowa State taking out BYU. I could see even Texas Tech. I could see Texas Tech beating BYU. But I mean, let's kind of dig into that game. Colorado takes on Texas Tech. I don't know what can if someone out there, please like, please comment, please subscribe. But comment, what was the tortilla thing? Why were Texas Tech fans throwing tortillas on the field? That was crazy. Like, and even Shadori was talking about after, like, I thought that was a penalty. Like, isn't that unsportsmanlike to like throw tortillas on the field? Anyways, Texas Tech takes on Colorado. Colorado wins it. This was a game where they were down, I believe, 13 or 14 to start off, and then Colorado just turned it on. They ended up outscoring them 41 to like 14 after that. And I mean, they put on a show. Travis Hunter just doing out there doing Travis Hunter things, looking great on both sides of the ball. Shador is playing himself into being one of the top quarterbacks in the upcoming draft. And I mean, truly playing himself into it, not like just based off of his name, not based off the buzz. He's actually looking really good again. And I think that now that he's comfortable behind this offensive line, he is able to showcase what he can do both with his legs and with his arm. And he's played himself into truly one of the top prospects at quarterback for this upcoming draft, and I'm excited to see it. And I think the difference between Colorado and Texas Tech in this game was the fact that, one, Colorado has an edge with Dion at quarterback, or with Dion at head coach and Shador at quarterback. They thrive off of being the villains. They want to shout out to Kirk O'Chains. They want to go in there. They want to walk into your trap, take over your trap. They love doing that. And when the Texas Tech crowd was giving them shit and trying to throw stuff on the field, they were eating it up. And the broadcast even said, like, I get if your team is getting excited by this, but if anything, it is doing a detriment to your team. Your team is not responding well to the crowd being into it and throwing things and getting excited. They are instead just getting the Colorado sidelines riled up and they're shoving it down your throat. So we need to dial it back. And so, yeah, I mean that they had a huge edge in that because of who they have at leadership. They love to play the villain. They just eat it up. They want you to be mad at them. They want you to like, oh, we hate you. Let's throw things because you know what we're gonna go out there and do? We're gonna go out there and just be better than your team. We're gonna put it on you and we're gonna run up the score because that's what we do. That is what we expect to do. And you love to see that from Colorado. Also, the talent gap, the speed gap between Colorado and Texas Tech was just fully on display. I mean, they have an extension of their run game that I it's going to be hard at any level to defend realistically. That their wide receivers are so speedy and that screen game is so nasty. It is going to be so hard to defend because you can go from either side, either Travis Hunter, Wester, all those guys, Shepard, all those guys have such speed that they can take any of these screens and straight house it. So kudos to them. They end up taking the win. They put themselves in the prime second spot in the Big 12 conference right now. If they continue to win out, it'll be them in the conference championship game going against BYU. And the another team in that Big 12 conversation, Iowa State. Iowa State lost to this Texas Tech team last week. They were hoping for a bounce back game against Kansas, and my co-host Drew called it. He said, "I think Kansas has played really good ball. They've lost a lot of close games. I think that they go out there and beat Iowa State." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. No, this is an Iowa State team that has looked awesome. Why would they go out there when they know they control their own destiny? If they continue to go get wins, it'll be them in the championship game." And I don't know what happened. I don't know, like, it is you gotta give credit to Kansas, but also you've gotta really sock it to Iowa State. You knew you had your legacy and your like, how this season is gonna play out in your own hands, and you just crumble. Once you face adversity, it's about how you get back up, and they just didn't. They stayed down, and I mean, they deserve to fall down a couple notches. It's sad to see because they've been really good throughout this season, but you got to pick yourself up no matter what, and they just didn't this game. And Kansas took advantage of it. Kansas goes out there, punches them in the mouth, and realistically, it was not a close game as well. I mean, they put it on them the whole time. All right, a couple of quick hit games. Boise State takes on Nevada. They win 28-21. Ashton Genty has another monster game. He has over 200 yards. I believe he had 2 touchdowns. I'll have to double check on that. He ends up, as of today, which is the 10th, he is the number 3 in the Heisman odds. It is Ashton Genty. Then a few points above him is Dylan Gabriel. And I believe it's Travis Hunter at number 1. So Cam Ward, as of today, has fallen off completely. He is now plus 800, whereas Ashton Genty is, I believe, plus 350, and Dylan Gabriel is plus 320. And I believe Travis Hunter is now like plus 180. You'll have to double check my work on that, but comment and let me know. So he keeps into it. Another quick game that I really just want to touch base on, Texas taking on Florida. Texas, I mean, just goes out there and lays a whooping on them. This comes after Florida announces that Billy Napier is going to continue to be the Florida Gators coach. And you go out there and lay an egg. I mean, realistically, I understand you're on your third string quarterback, but to go out there and just lie down and die as soon as they announce that you're going to continue to coach, like, what are we doing here? And I commended him for what he's done because I had him fired in week 2 or week 3, and his team has continued to battle. They've found ways to win. They found ways to be competitive against top talent. But at the end of the day, Florida. What are we doing? Like we know that this guy is just not good enough to compete, and he is actually losing us recruits. Like we are losing talent because we are getting blown out and because they don't believe in this guy. Why are we going to keep him around? We have other viable coaches. We are Florida. If we go out there and we say, "Hey, we're open for business," there are going to be a ton of guys lined up to go out and do this. Like I don't get the propensity to stick with what it is. And what we have right now is mediocre. So I don't get it. I mean, I know that they came out with a statement saying that they are going to keep him as the coach. In that statement, it didn't say for the next season. It just said that they are going to keep him. I understand that you have to put out a statement to keep recruits, but does this mean that they are going to keep him for next year? If so, you know what you can expect. It's going to be another mediocre season. I think you need to make the change, and I think you need to make it now rather than later. But that's me. I guess I don't know, but Texas looked good against this Florida Gators team that is obviously drowning. And how good can Texas really be? I mean, we've seen them get just they had no answers for Georgia's defense, but I still think they can compete against the upper echelon of the teams in this nation. I can see them really going against, pretty much anyone but like Georgia, Penn. I want to say I want to see the match. I would like to see a matchup between Texas and Penn State, but I can see them struggling against Ohio State and Oregon. Those are but again, we'll see moving forward. It's going to be an awesome end of the year. I think it's going to be a sprint to the finish. All of these spots in the college football playoff start to fill up, who is going to take their game to the next level to try to prove that they truly belong, and who is going to fall out of the race. It's going to be interesting. Let me know your thoughts. Go ahead and drop some comments. Be sure to subscribe, and please hit like. All right, I'll see you next time. Later.